Hello and welcome to YNWA Transfer News, your ultimate source for all Liverpool FC transfer news. Our first news is this: Liverpool news and transfers. Live Crystal Palace reaction. Isak verdict. Guehi expected. Liverpool's perfect start to the season is over after Crystal Palace dramatically sentenced Arne Slot's side to its first defeat of the campaign. Eddie Nketiah's goal deep into stoppage time saw the Reds fall to a 2-1 defeat at Selhurst Park, just minutes after Federico Chiesa had looked to have rescued a point from what had been a hugely disappointing display from the visitors. There's no time for Liverpool to dwell on its first slip-up, though, with Champions League commitments next on the agenda as the Reds make the long journey to Turkey to take on Galatasaray. They'll have to shake off the defeat in London, with a number of players having underperformed and left Slot with a few questions to answer, and not much time to iron things out. Harvey Elliott struggles. Former Liverpool ace Harvey Elliott was taken off at halftime against Fulham today. Post-match, Unai Emery said Elliott was taken off because he is still adapting to life with the Midlands outfit. He felt that Emi Buendia, who scored, was a better option in the circumstances. Keep going. For him, and I change him more tactically because Buendia is giving us energy and his adaptation is better than Elliott, Emery said. He needs time, Elliott. Emiliano did fantastic. Joe Gomez interest.ac. Milan and Burnley are among the clubs interested in signing Joe Gomez from Liverpool. According to the Italian outlet Calcio Mercato, Brighton was also keen in the summer, but Liverpool didn't allow Gomez to move on because it didn't bring in a replacement. That will remain the case in January, with Giovanni Leone's injury to come into contention too. Arne Slot should make bold Ibrahima Konate change after timely Mark Guehi reminder. In the first half, in particular as Liverpool lost 2-1 to Crystal Palace, the centre-back narrative essentially wrote itself. In the week that Giovanni Leone looked excellent against Southampton but was then cruelly stretchered off, Ibrahima Konate was all over the show as he took on Jean-Philippe Mateta at Selhurst Park. And Mark Guehi quietly impressed. Liverpool shorter than it would like to be in terms of defenders. Check. Konate, the man whose contract is edging towards expiry, playing poorly. Yep. And Guehi, who could easily have been lining up against Crystal Palace doing so well for the Eagles. Inevitable. Konate emerged from the second half with some credit as he restored some composure to his performance, but he was frankly fortunate to emerge after the interval. Connor Bradley wasn't afforded the same chance to put things right. Arne Slot hooked Milos Kerkez at Burnley even before the break because he was on a booking and walking a tightrope, and Konate looked much more likely to make a costly error here. In the end, it was the right decision to keep Konate on the field even if Liverpool still lost, but his form at the start of the new campaign might be cause for some concern. Even alongside Virgil van Dijk, Konate has looked flustered at times. At his best, he is a physical monster who is impossible to pass, but it has been a while since he put in a showing of that level. The best attribute of a center-back is consistency, and at 26, Konate should be taking the next step in his development and getting better on that front. Though he did well to recover in the second half, Liverpool's first 45 minutes resembled the infamous 7-2 defeat to Aston Villa, with Van Dijk admitting afterwards that Crystal Palace should have been 3 or 4 goals up. Konate can be a 9-10 defender when he performs at his best. But here, he rated at 3-10 for 45 minutes and bumped up his mark after the interval. Guehi, in comparison, is rarely going to get above an 8, but is unlikely to slip down below a 7. While Liverpool identified a market opportunity for the Crystal Palace captain, it didn't quite come off in the end. And losing Leone to an ACL injury was not something that could be planned for, but being down to just 3 senior center-backs for the remainder of the campaign will require minutes to be managed. Konate can't play every game all the time, and after his performance against Crystal Palace, there will rarely be a stronger argument to bench him. Joe Gomez looked a little rusty against Southampton in the League Cup, and throwing him into a tasty atmosphere in Turkey against Galatasaray would come with a level of risk of its own. But that should certainly be an option under consideration. Konate simply hasn't gotten going this season. With both rotation and his form in mind, going with Gomez for at least one of the two big games that follow this week seems a plausible solution. I don't like all this player power, and how Isak handled himself was poor. Newcastle fans have every right to be frustrated. Chris Waddle takes aim at Alexander Isak over his Liverpool move. The issue of Alexander Isak's future was never far away from the headlines this summer. With the transfer saga between Newcastle United and Liverpool running right until the final minutes of the transfer window, the Reds eventually got their man, sealing a £125 million move for the Swedish striker, but not until he had effectively gone on strike at St. James's Park, training alone at his former club Real Sociedad, before accusing the club of breaking a promise that he could leave the club. This deadlock was eventually broken when the Magpies secured a replacement in Nick Woltemade, which effectively gave Isak the green light to make the move to Merseyside. Chris Waddle on Isak's Newcastle spell and departure. Former Newcastle star Chris, Waddle has looked back at Isak's time at his former club and the messy divorce that followed. He wasn't a world beater at that stage. Many had never heard of him. Waddle tells 442 about Isak's arrival in the Premier League. It was a massive outlay for an unproven striker with a bit of a checkered past. He had a lot to prove. Isak got to work quickly, scoring his first Premier League goal in a narrow defeat at Anfield. It was a cracking strike and a brilliant way to introduce himself to the Newcastle fans, recalls Waddle, who 442 ranked at no. 10 in a list of the best English midfielders ever. He was the type of player that Geordies adore in their team. He's an entertainer, a goal scorer, a proper number 9. Newcastle fans have always loved those players. Isak's Toon career peaked last season when he scored what proved to be the winning goal in the Carabao Cup final against Liverpool, helping to deliver the club's first major trophy since 1969. It was a brilliant day in Newcastle's history, smiles Waddle. Isak was exceptional all the way through the competition. He scored against Chelsea and Arsenal en route to the final, then finished the job against Liverpool. Big goals against big teams. But just 5 months later, that relationship had soured. I don't like all this player power, and how he handled himself was poor, says Waddle. If he wanted to leave, he should have made it clear to everybody from the off. I think people would have respected that more. Newcastle fans have every right to be frustrated. He handled it the wrong way. It was no surprise to see how hurt the fans were by all of it, laments Waddle. Isak was absolutely worshipped on Tyneside. The fans stuck by him during his various injuries, and there were a lot of them, and Eddie Howe helped turn him into a world beater. They all deserved better than that. Liverpool FC News. Arne Slot confirms unsung hero is finally ready to join. Liverpool work off a meritocracy style of decision-making in their squad. Whether it's potential or impact in terms of tangible metrics, players have to show that they've earned their opportunities. Everyone delivers in training, which is why Arne Slot often has a lot of decisions to make prior to a match day, but with such great competition comes a ruthlessness in his selection policy. If you don't deliver when called upon, then you're out, and players' reputations will only carry them so far. In spite of winning 7 of their 8 games in all competitions this season, Liverpool haven't really managed to deliver an all-round performance that convinces you that everything's fallen into place. Slot has decided to utilize his preferred players in his transition period, while the new signings try to make themselves at home. Following that call, some of the out-of-favor players are having to work twice as hard to prove themselves. One unsung hero might now have a chance to break through. Player makes irrefutable case to Slotin the Reds' frustrating contest against Crystal Palace on Saturday afternoon. A late draw was secured by Federico Chiesa, scoring an equalizer in the 87th minute, only for an even later goal to be conceded in the 97th minute, allowing the Eagles to give Liverpool a taste of their own medicine. Late winners have become an integral part in Slot's team this season. For whatever reason, there is an inability to wrap up the game prior to the 80th minute. As such, the result is constantly at risk. A lot of the reaction to the loss has been over the top, especially since the Reds are going to remain at the top of the Premier League this weekend. With at least a 2-point cushion, It's only one loss. However, it did feel as though the result fairly reflected Liverpool's performance. While 6 big chances were created, 7 were conceded to the Eagles. You're inevitably going to concede a second if your goal is being pummeled with 2.92 xG of opportunities. Palace deserved their win. Thank you for watching. Like and comment. Subscribe.